Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you. Coming at you with another Mitsurugi variant, this time Fiendsmith. This plays very similarly to Pure, but it does have a very important offshoot. I'm going to show you the turn 1 combo line here to not only demonstrate how it plays, but I want you to see just how powerful this end board is going to turn out to be. So we're going to lead with Habakiri here and activate the in-hand effect in order to special summon a Saji from our deck, which will then of course tribute. Now this line is going to play very similarly to Pure Mitsurugi. So we're going to activate Saji, and I'm actually going to grab Prayers and not the Ritual right away. And then we are going to activate Prayers. Tribute a monster, yes, we will be tributing the Habakiri that is in our hand. To activate both effects, we can not only add the Aramasa from deck to hand that we can use our normal summon on, but then we will special summon the Saji right back to our field. Now Habakiri gets to activate in order to add a Mitsurugi card. We're going to add a Mitsurugi Ritual. It's fine to tribute the Habakiri in our hand because we're going to use Mirror later in order to bring it back from the graveyard, but we're definitely going to want to grab the Ritual first. Alright, now let's normal summon our Aramasa, and we can activate in order to add the Murakumo from our deck to our hand. And now by activating Mitsurugi Ritual, we're going to summon from our hand the Murakumo by using Kusanagi as well as Night Sword Serpent from our deck. And just throw that right over here. And we'll activate both effects. We'll do Chainlink 1 Kusanagi on the Ritual. We'll do that as Chainlink 1 in order to, of course, play around Ghost Spell. And then Chainlink 2 Night Sword Serpent for the revive. Alright, there's Night Sword. And Kusanagi gets back the Ritual. Alright, now, in order to insulate the rest of our combo and also make room on our board, we are going to, at this point, pivot into our Fiendsmith line. We're going to use 2 of our level 4 monsters here in order to make Moon of the Closed Heaven, which we will, of course, then be linking off for Fiendsmith's Requiem. Alright, let's go for the Requiem effect. Of course, we're going to summon the Lacrima from our deck. And we'll activate the Lacrima's effect, sending off Engraver to the graveyard. Let's go ahead and use the graveyard effect of Engraver, putting back Moon, and special summoning to our field. Now we're going to take our 2 Fiendsmith monsters and turn them into Fiendsmith sequence. Like so. We're of course going to activate sequence. And we're going to summon Fiendsmith's Lacrima. You could make a Desiree here if you wanted to, but I'm actually about to make an Appaloosa, which I think is a little bit better. So we're going to make Fiendsmith's Lacrima using Requiem and Lacrima, the Crimson Tears. Alright, Fiendsmith's Lacrima effect activates in order to revive the Engraver. And then now we're going to make that 3 material Appaloosa as mentioned. So this way, if your opponent has like an Abiru, they'll have to use it against your Fiendsmith line. And even if they do, you can simply chain Murakumo, and on top of that, Murakumo will still revive itself and search because it was tributed by the Nibiru. So, yeah, we'll deal with a burn, putting back our sequence, and now that we have established the Appaloosa on our board, now let's activate our Ritual again, this time summoning from deck. We're going to summon the Futsu no Mitama, and we'll tribute the Murakumo in order to do so. Alright, now Murakumo's effect gets to activate here. And we are going to want to add the Mitsurugi Mirror from our deck to our hand. And then, of course, the Murakumo will revive itself. Alright, let's activate Mitsurugi Mirror. And I'm going to special summon Habakiri from my graveyard using the Mitama as a ritual material because I haven't tributed yet. Alright, now we can go for the Mitama effect. And this time we are going to want to add a Prayers from deck to hand. It is very important that you get a Prayers here. Obviously, ideally, we would have gone for Great Purification, but I'll show you why Prayers is really important here in a moment. We're going to revive the Futsu no Mitana. Alright, now at this point, let's go ahead and make our rank 8. We're going to make actually number 38 Hope Harbinger. And I'm going to make that with Murakumo and Habakiri. This sets up a spell negate in addition to our 3 monster negates. And this is going to look kind of weird, but I'm actually going to turn Saji and Mitama into IP Masquerena. And then I'm going to set Prayers. And at the end of your main one, or yeah, the end of your turn one, basically, this is what your end board is going to look like. However, as we go into our opponent's turn, during the draw phase, you're going to want to activate the Prayers. We're going to use the second effect, and then we're going to revive the Futsu no Mitama to our board. Alright, so at this point, going into your opponent's turn, now you have the Futsu no Mitama in play. And you'll want to sequence your disrupts like so. You first want to activate Hope Harbinger to negate a spell card. It's important to do this first because Hope Harbinger does not detach materials in order to negate spell cards, which means that in order to revive your Murakumo, you're going to have to use IP Masquerena, making SP Little Knight or Dynamundo, you know, your choice, and you're going to have to use the number 38 Hope Harbinger as a material in order to do so. That's what gets the Murakumo into the graveyard, which you can then revive the Murakumo with the Futsu no Mitama. So it does require you to play out your negates in a specific way. However, you can see that this is actually still a decided improvement over the pure Mitsurugi end board. Basically, instead of ending on number 90 IP and Mitama for 1 monster negate and then the IP plus Mitama, we end on the Appaloosa and Hope Harbinger plus the IP and then the Prayers to revive Mitama. So that's 3 monster negates, 1 spell negate, and then the IP plus Mitama. Now, we don't get Great Purification here. However, it's not that hard to get Great Purification, as you simply have to use something like Pre-Prep to add like the Mitsurugi Mirror to your hand. Or if you already opened with Mirror or Prayers, you can use one of your searches for Great Purification. So in a lot of hands, you'll have that on your board as well. Anyway, I just wanted to start by showing off why I think Fiendsmith Mitsurugi is a decided improvement over the pure build before we go into our replays, which let's go ahead and do that now. Alright, let's start off with a going second game against Maliss. I actually have a lot of going second or coin flip lost duels. I think there's one where I lost the coin flip and my opponent made me go first, but I have a lot of coin flip lost games with this deck because this deck is extremely powerful, I think regardless of whether you go first or second. Because of course, not only do you have such a powerful turn 1 board, but you have a ton of room for hand trap. So here my opponent's going with Chessy Cat and TB11. We're going to fire off the Thualos in response to that TB11, which is summoning Dormouse here. Chessy Cat gets to revive. And then they're going to use Gold Sark in order to go for another Banish here. Looks like that one is going to be for March Hare, which will then get to add itself. One thing I'm noticing about the way my opponent's playing is they're using a lot of their Banish, revive effects really early on. Meaning that if I'm able to disrupt them later, they won't have nearly as much follow-up. It's always important to note how your opponent is comboing, not just how, what they're doing. Like, see, with this White Rabbit summon, my opponent has now used the Banish special summon effect of every, and as well as March Hare, the Banish add effect of every main deck Maliss monster. Meaning, for one, if I had a Nibiru, I could just drop it right here, and they would just be, like, done. 2, moreover, again, I'm able to keep track of this, and now know that if I disrupt them later, they won't be able to use, like, a March Hare or a Gold Sark or something to kind of fall back on. Not even Maliss and Underground really does anything for them moving forward at this point. Anyway, White Rabbit's going to set the GWC. It looks like they're now going for Red Ransom. It's kind of one of the reasons why I didn't really bother, using Imperm against Red Ransom right here. It's like, yeah, they can add Underground if they want. It's not really going to do a ton here. Although I guess I don't want them to use the I don't want them to add the Maliss in the mirror, but moreover, I already know they're going to use the GWC anyway, so yeah. I spoke a little early. I thought I was not going to use the Imperm there, but I guess there's nothing else. This forces the GWC, which to be fair, they were going to use either way. Looks like they added Maliss and Underground anyway. I guess they're going to use Maliss and Underground to banish Maliss in the mirror, but I kind of think it would have been better for my opponent to just simply add Maliss in the mirror, but yeah, that Magnum Hut ended up banishing the Link decoder there. Yeah, Bestials are really good hand traps in this meta. They're not only like pretty obviously good against Mitsurugi for banishing the stuff as it goes to revive, but even against Maliss, you know, Bestials are not bad by any stretch of the imagination there. They are still going to have a lot of use against Link decoder, against the Splash Mage target. In some situations, it could be even good against March Hare if they've already, you know, used their Maliss banish effect and only got that one in the graveyard. I don't know, that's really situational, but... So I decided to fire off that Ash Boss in there, even though my opponent had Appaloosa up, just to get one of the negates out of the way. Now they're going to go for a White Binder, still under the Fulo, so I'm still drawing cards here. White Binder's going to banish a bunch of my hand traps, that's fine, I don't care. Sets the GWC, that's also, you know, whatever, expected. They set 2 more and then pass. Now, end phase, I'm going to add Druid Swarm, and then I'm going to activate Druid Swarm, and that's going to force the second Appaloosa negate. So, already right out the gate, I don't have to deal with this Appaloosa anymore, and I'm very grateful for that. So, really, if you think about it, there's not a ton that I have to deal with for my opponent here, because they never made Heartscriptor at any point during their turn. So, I don't have to deal with that. I don't have to deal with Appaloosa. I don't have to deal with Allied Code Talker. I just have to deal with GWC and 2 unknown face-down cards, as well as maybe a hand trap that Cross-Out Designator can deal with. I'm going to lead with normal summon Aramasa here to add the Habakiri. We'll activate Habakiri's effect. I would have loved to have led with pre-prep, but obviously I have the Mitsurugi Mirror in hand, so no dice there. They're going to use Call By against the Saji. I'm going to activate Cross-Out Designator against that Call By, because I very much want this Spell Search. Even if it did get hit with a Call By, I do still have the Mirror, so I would have like options, but no, I want to get this Prayers online. Prayers to tribute the Habakiri in hand, as mentioned before, then we can add Murakumo. That sets up the Mirror Revive for the Habakiri later. Also the Mirror Search for the Ritual here. Or not the Mirror Search, the Habakiri Search for the Ritual. Turns out their other face-down card they set from hand was Dominus Impulse, and that's going to negate the Mitsurugi Mirror. Which is annoying, but not the end of the world, because I just have the Ritual. Sorry, I keep getting those mixed up. Impulse negated the Ritual. I have Mirror in hand anyway, which I can simply use in order to Ritual Summon. It's really confusing to me that they call it Mitsurugi Ritual, because I usually call an Archetype's Ritual spell just Archetype named Ritual, but that's just what they called the spell here, so yeah, oops, sometimes I still refer to the Mirror as Mitsurugi Ritual. At this point, I'm going to go for a little side quest on some Fiendsmith plays here. I think I'm trying to get a Desiree online, or maybe even just enough damage for lethal. Yeah, it looks like, well, no, I have enough damage for lethal now. But being able to negate the GWC with Desiree would be awesome. I imagine my opponent's going to flip GWC before I get to summoning Desiree, but who knows, maybe they won't. Sequence F, that's going to shuffle back 3. Here's the Desiree. And there is a Nibiru from our opponent. I'm going to chain the Murakumo, as well as Maxi, just to get a discard as well as a couple of draws here. Also, if I don't have to deal with the Nibiru body on the field, that would be nice. But my opponent made the classic misplay of just choosing to discard another card from their hand. I've mentioned this before in another video, but if you're ever in this situation where you are activating the Nibiru and your opponent chains the Murakumo, all you have to do is discard the Nibiru. It will resolve anyway, and your opponent won't get the token. You won't get the Nibiru, but your opponent won't get the token. That is still kind of annoying though, because I really wanted to force this GWC. As you can see, I'm going to use Desiree to target the face-down GWC, just to finally get them to chain it. I really just wanted this out of the way before I proceeded into the rest of my turn, so that I knew fully what I was up against, you know, so to speak. But also forcing the GWC is great here because I'm going to revive the Murakumo, which means that I'm going to get the board wipe anyway. Or wait, no, sorry, I don't think I will get the board wipe because I think I already used that. Yes, I did already use the board wipe. My mistake, my mistake. I forgot I had already used that effect. But regardless, they're going to add the March Hare here. Go for the White Rabbit summon, which gets me a draw. Go for the Red Ransom summon, which gets me a draw. As well as, of course, you know, getting them some banishes and sets and whatnot. Trusty Cat comes online. They're just going to set MTP. I am going to have to think about that in terms of, like, this Red Ransom that's online. Or I could simply go for Dynamundo here, and then Dynamundo will force the MTP. Yeah, so they can use MTP to banish White Binder, and then my Dynamundo. White Binder revives and gets them a draw. And me a draw as well. Alright, now finally, we're going to go for Mitsurugi Ritual again, this time summoning Habakiri from deck by attributing the Kusanagi and Night Sword Serpent from hand. Or sorry, the Aramasa, I think it was, the Night Sword Serpent from hand. But I can revive the Engraver, equip the Requiem. Now we can go for the Drew Swarm summon as well. And at this point, I'm just going to move into battle phase, and this is how I'm going to answer my opponent's board. By simply battling over it. We can then, during main phase 2, activate the Engraver effect to get rid of their last body, before simply linking everything into a 4-material Appaloosa. After setting 5, which actually matters. It kind of looks like it doesn't, but I can use Prayers to revive a ritual monster, and then I'll have Great Purification online as well. Granted, the other 3, the 2 Prepeps in the mirror, are simply bluffs, but I really want to just intimidate my opponent going into their turn. They're going to go normal summon White Binder, link that off for Lingaribo, which, by the way, looking at their graveyard, they've used up pretty much like almost all of their stuff already. And then Link Decoder's in the banish, so like they don't have a ton of options moving forward here. They can go for Lingaribo, I'm going to Appaloosa, negate the March Hare, and they just concede at that point. Never mind that I still could have gone Prayers, Revive Murakumo, Board Wipe, Murakumo negate, and then also have Great Purification negate online. But yeah, they'd already used up most of their resources, and they still had a big Appaloosa to push through. So that actually ended up panning out, and I definitely want to start with that, as that was a very back and forth duel. We still have a couple more to check out, though. Let's go into the next one. Okay, here's another going second game. This one's going to be a mirror match, actually. My opponent is also on Fiendsmith, specifically Fiendsmith Mitsurugi. They're playing a lot more of both engines than I am. I actually am kind of somewhat playing a minimalist package for pure Mitsurugi. Like, I'm playing the Futsu no Mitama, but I'm really not doing in the mirror and the pre-preps as well, but I'm not doing a ton besides that, honestly, in the grand scheme of things. Similarly with Fiendsmith, I'm only playing one tracked, and I'm not playing, like, the Requiem, or not Requiem. Is that the trap card? No, Paradise. I'm not playing Paradise either. As always, I'll show you my build at the end of the video, but anyway, here we led with what, Maxi, and they had called by, so now at this point I just have Imperm going into their board. But they went for a Prayers, or they went for Ritual to summon the Habakiri here, which was a little bit confusing to me, considering you're supposed to summon that off of Mirror. Although maybe they're going to use Mirror to summon the Futsu no Mitama that they're going to tribute from hand? I don't know, I guess that still could be a possibility here. But no, they tributed a Habakiri from the field to go for the Murakumo. So they're either just like sequencing differently altogether, or they're sequencing in a way that is not optimal. I kind of think it's the latter. The Habakiri search off the Prayers is a little odd. I mean, I guess they don't have anything else to search at this point, to be fair. But they're not playing Night Sword Serpent, so yeah, they don't really have a ton else to do. I think my opponent just actually threw there. They totally threw on this line. They didn't even bother linking these two in the Moon of the Closed Heaven, which is a little bit confusing to me, but we'll definitely take it. I can simply use my Imperm that I was holding on the Murakumo And then, of course, I won't discard. I'll just let it get negated here. That's fine. If my opponent had actually played optimally, I think what I would have done is I would have waited to use the Imperm on sequence. Murakumo would have activated to force me to discard, which I would have done and been ultimately fine with. But now I'm going to lead with Fiendsmith stuff. Because it's less committal, it puts negates on the board, and also it doesn't clue my opponent in that I'm playing Mitsurugi stuff. It also plays around Droll. Well, I guess the way I played didn't, because I led with Engraver and Tract, but... Alright, they're going to go for Prayers. No point in really chaining Ash Blossom here, so I'm not going to. And then we're going to go for the Engraver Summon, to which they are going to go for the Murakumo Revive and then destroy my field. This, of course, being the other reason I wanted to go Fiendsmith first, was to bait out the Murakumo board wipe. Which is coming here in just a moment. As soon as they summon. There it is, yep. Which, like, okay, now we can go Habakiri for the Saji, tribute Saji, Saji F, we already have Prayers. So I'm just going to grab Ritual here. But I'm still going to Prayers first, tributing the Habakiri in hand in order to add Aramasa. And then revive Saji. We can go Habakiri effect in order to add Mirror. I'm going to normal summon Aramasa. Remember, I have not done that yet. I've not normal summoned. That'll let me add Murakumo. Now I'm going to go Ritual to dump Sword, Serpent, and Kusanagi in order to summon the Murakumo in my hand. Now I can even chain block the Murakumo board wipe as well as the Kusanagi add with the Night Sword Serpent special summon. And it seems like for all the cards in my opponent's hand, they don't really seem to have any hand traps to respond to this with. Thankfully for me. There goes their board. We're going to go for the Mitsurugi Ritual here, tributing Murakumo in order to summon the Futsu no Mitama from our deck. This, of course, will trigger the Murakumo to add the Great Purification and Revive. And I'm now going to overlay for King of the Feral Imps, really just to get lethal on board. But I'll get a search in while I'm at it, because why not? And they're just going to concede as soon as they see I have lethal here. I want to note, this is actually an older build where I was still playing 2 Murakumo. In the deck list I'm going to show you here at the end of the video, you'll only see 1 Murakumo. But I took that out for... Oh, I'm actually trying to remember. I think for another hand trap. That's what it was, yeah. Like another Fulos or Droll, something like that. Anyway, one last duel before we take a look at that deck list. Let's go into that game here. Okay, so this last game, it's weird. I'm playing against, like, basically a going second to Mitsurugi deck. It's like pure Mitsurugi, but they're playing, like, the bare minimum engine and just a ton of hand traps and board breakers. I'm not really sure why. Maybe this person was just sick of losing coin flips and decided to just lose every coin flip by choice moving forward, but either way, I'll definitely take going first, personally, when I'm playing Mitsurugi. They're going to throw out a Maxi, but thankfully we do have the cross-out designator. Also gotta love playing cross-out in a Mitsurugi Fiendsmith deck, where it can act as a pseudo-solemn judgment against, like, literally 90% of decks out there. Now here they have an Ash Blossom for my Saji, which would have been fantastic for them if I didn't already just have Prayers in my hand anyway. And let's be real, even if I didn't have Prayers, I just have Mirror plus Murakumo in my hand anyway, so... we were pretty much good no matter what here. We get to use the Habakiri in order to add the Ritual, which will then activate to dump Kusanagi and Night Sword Serpent. There's Murakumo. Now, at this point, we're just going to be doing all the typical standard steps. I mean, really, when you're playing a variant of Mitsurugi like this, any variant where you're playing Mitsurugi Mirror, I think the main thing that's really just going to be different is using Prayers to tribute the Habakiri in your hand. But this will actually end up being a pretty standard turn 1 combo line, despite the fact that our opponent had Maxi and Ash Blossom. So good. I mean, that's of course always going to be the disgusting thing about playing, you know, meta decks right now, is that you can just push through hand traps pretty naturally. I mean, that's why I've been maining Droll and Fuelos as like my hand traps of choice. Is because if you're gonna like fire off a hand trap in this meta, you really need it to be one that's gonna have a ton of impact. And honestly, stuff like Valor and Imperm that only negate one thing, or even like the Ghost Squirrels like Ogre and honestly Ghost Bell too, just have a hard time having a ton of impact when they're only stopping one thing, right? I think Bystials are a little bit different because being able to like Magnum Hut the Murakumo or something like that is not only stopping, it's not just stopping a revive, it's stopping negates, it's stopping discards, it's stopping board wipes, like you're getting a lot of value out of that. Now here, this is a hand where since we opened, you know, the prayers earlier, I get to actually add the Great Purification with one of my searches. Because now with this last search, I'm going to add the other prayers to then revive the Futsu no Mitama during my opponent's turn. Here's normal summon Aramasa. Again, old replay. I did end up taking out the second Murakumo. Because, like, honestly, second Murakumo doesn't come up a ton in pure Mitsurugi anyway. And it comes up even less in this Fiendsmith variant. But there we go. There's our pretty typical end board with the Great Purification added because we got that extra search. Here's the Futsu no Mitama revive during the opponent's turn. They're actually going to lead with Impulse. Now, I know I said it was Mitsurugi, but they're actually using Impulse as like a hand trap, which is something you can actually do in like any deck if you wanted to. You can simply use Impulse for Fire Attacker, and then when your opponent adds a card from deck to hand, except by drawing it, then you can use Fire Attacker to draw 2, discard 1. Again, that's something you can do in any deck. My opponent's just doing it here, I guess, because again they're a going second build, question mark, but well, regardless, I'll use Appaloosa to negate this draw 2, discard 1. Because it seemed like they were fishing for draws here. They went to end their main phase at this point. It's like there's no reason not to go SP for the Banish here. Although, this was a little bit awkward for you to have not used the Hope Harbinger. Because now I can't put Murakumo in the graveyard. But I'm going to use the Hope Harbinger on this Prayers. And now at this point, they have so few bodies they have access to anyway, so few cards, that I feel like it doesn't really matter that we can't revive the Murakumo here. We can use Appaloosa to negate their Murakumo search, and now I'm just going to use Great Purification on their last card, which was Tracked here. And there's the Concede. Alright, there is that last duel. Let me go ahead and show you the deck list here. I'll break it down for you. Okay, here is the list. So, as you can see, we're a little bit above 40 in order to fit everything that I wanted to. But in spite of that, we have very, very good ratios here. We're going to count starters and hand traps. So I am counting Fiendsmith cards as starters because we are actually playing Chorozo and Lina. It didn't come up in any of my games, but I did show it when I played Snake Eye Fiendsmith with Mitsurugi. But if you open your Fiendsmith engine, basically you can use Sequence to make Lacrima, and then revive Lacrima the Crimson Tears. Then you can equip Requiem from your graveyard to the Lacrima, after which point you can link into Lina using the Sequence plus Fiendsmith's Lacrima, and then you can use the equipped Requiem plus the Lina in order to summon Chorozo. At that point you have Chorozo plus Lacrima the Crimson Tears in play, and that's how you make King of the Pharaoh Imps. So it does take up your entire Fiendsmith engine. However, if you open a Fiendsmith card and nothing else, you can still end on a full pure Mitsurugi build with the way I have the extra in main deck set up here. So for our starters, we're playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 in a 42 card build is a very, very good amount. And then for hand traps, we're on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I really like having 15 hand traps in my Mitsurugi decks. It's a really good ratio to have to make sure you're very consistently opening at least one, along with at least one card starter. And it's really not too hard to find room in your Mitsurugi decks, as long as you're willing to give up a little bit of engine. So, as mentioned before, we're only on the one ritual, the one Murakumo, despite playing Futsu no Mitama and Mirror. Basically, we have a pure Mitsurugi setup, but with, like, Mitsurugi engine ratios. But I think that's fine here, because I think the Fiendsmith not only allows for more starters, but again, you saw how it affected the ceiling, our end board. When we do open with Mitsurugi plays, you can pivot into Fiendsmith and very easily just add a 3-material Appaloosa to your board, which I don't think I need to tell you is really, really good. Yeah, I think the rest of the starter deck? I was about to say starter deck. I think the rest of the extra and main deck are pretty self-explanatory. You know, it's basically, again, the pure Mitsurugi setup, but trimmed down in order to make room for the Fiendsmith engine. So, I think that ultimately it is worth it to make room for the Fiendsmith engine, and I think moving forward, this might even just be my new main deck. I was using pure Mitsurugi as like my default laddering deck, but I think I'm actually just going to be playing this moving forward. But definitely let me know what you think in the comments below of the build, the combo line. I always love getting your feedback, but that's going to do it for now. Thanks as always for watching. Let's move on to our outro. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Thank you so very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video, which by the way is one of the best ways to support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, take a look at the names on screen. These are folks who have been so generous as to either join as a YouTube member or subscribe over on patreon.com/Hexlex to support. There's also perks for doing so. If you would like to see YouTube videos early, as well as some exclusive videos that get uploaded to YouTube, but for one reason or another I decide not to publish, definitely go ahead and hit that join button to see content early, as well as some exclusive content. If you're looking for more exclusive content, over on patreon.com, I upload exclusive videos that are not posted on YouTube just about every single day. Whether you choose to subscribe over on Patreon, join as a YouTube member, or simply continue to watch, your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much. But for now, this is Hexlex. I am signing out, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.